Okay, first off, Dennis Delbert, Runner's Connection. When I get to November, it'll be 25 years. So I started in 1999 and just plugged away at it. It was one of those things I'd always been in business. Like my dad started a business. We had a potato chip distributorship, and my dad started that in 1947. And he passed away in 89, and me and my brother took over from there. But I kind of wanted something that had my signature, something that, it was nice, and I knew that business well, but it wasn't, and the best word to put is a passion. It wasn't a passion that I had. So I wanted something that had my signature to it. And there was, I have 50 some years of running. At that time, it wasn't quite as much, and I had coached, and I knew running shoes, and I knew running injuries, and I knew training. I knew the facets of all of it. So that just said, I would rather attempt this and fail than not to attempt. So that's why.
And never know.
Never know. Yeah, you're always going to sit back and go, hey, what if? And I didn't want to be one of those what ifs. Yeah. So sure. Well, my other business, which was the distributorship, was in Bellaire. I lived just outside of Bellaire. I've been a Bellaire guy for all my life. And I always thought that I remember Bellaire from the 60s and 70s. Okay. Booming town, couldn't find a parking place outside. You got to ride around the block forever to find one. And it wasn't that I thought that would come back, but it was the fact that I wanted to keep it local. Bellaire was my roots. I didn't see any reason to go to the malls or to any place like that. So, Bellaire was home. Oh, 90%. I have well, I won't get into how far away. Actually, Belgium is about as far as I've had them, but I won't say they took the freeway or something. But anyway, this business for me has morphed over the years. I started it as a running business, which catered only to runners, which now has turned into foot doctors and orthopedic surgeons and everybody that wants people in shoes specific for what they're having done or have had done. So that's morphed into doctors from different areas. I've had from Pittsburgh, New Martinsville, Cambridge. Again, even when I opened, I knew the whole idea was not specifically to, I'm just going to have Bellaire people. That's not I've got to think bigger than that. And that was definitely one of the thoughts. I'll give you also going back a little bit to how I started. When I first started, I looked into being a franchise. There was a franchise that was out there, and I researched it and looked at it. I actually met with the owner of the franchise, and I had to go to Washington, D.C. to do that because that was one of their closest franchises at the time. They've grown since then. But I remember talking to this guy and saying, okay, what's the difference between me going with you and me doing this on my own? And he said, you need us. You need our name. You can't do this on your own. And I said, I had 5 hours of driving time coming home from Washington to look at that windshield and just say, okay, honestly, not to sound egotistical or anything, but I'd been a runner and a competitor all my life. And I'm like, don't tell me I can't, especially to my face, don't tell me I can't do something. So I got back and started making the phone calls. And the gentleman did not lie, so to speak. He was like, it's going to be tough. It was. but I kept plugging away at it. And what I found is if you got one shoe company, the rest of them don't like when you have one, so they follow along. But the idea was, I wanted, what I had to do was to get some of these companies, I had to send them a letter. And back to what you were saying, a lot of people have a passion for it, but fail. When I met with the guy from the franchise, he said, we'll get 200 inquiries by people wanting to open their own store. And it's always runners that think they want to have their own store, but they have no idea what it takes. And when I first started looking at getting the different shoe companies, I'm writing a letter and I'm going, I'm sitting there going, this is it. This is the doorway I have to get through. This has to be good. If it's not good, I'm probably not going to make it. So I put in my background. I had a background in business. I had been a coach. Trust me, just throwing in that you've run for X amount of years wasn't going to sit well. But the guy that the company I sent this to, he looked at it and he called me and he says, I put your resume on top. And I said, well, you got to tell me why. And he said, he goes, we can get a lot of people that their hobbies are, they want to start a store because this is their hobby. Yeah, it's your hobby, but you have a background a little bit in business. You have a coaching background. You've done pretty much a few other facets than just saying, this is my hobby. So I did have a lot more going for me and he said, he goes, I've got a few hundred requests to open a store, but we're going to put you on top. So the fact that, that I had to go through that process that was difficult, but I'd do it all over again. Yeah, but let me, I'm glad you brought that up because here's something that, and I just talked about this the other day. My father, who was in World War II, would have come back in 45. He worked in Wheeling at a place called Wheeling Corrugating. At that point, my older brother was born in 46. Okay. So my dad quits Wheeling Corrugating to start his own potato chip distributorship. And the more that I think back on that after what I went through, I'm going, oh, boy, did you take a risk. And my dad didn't have the education that you can get now. Back then, I mean, I don't even know if he completed high school. I'm almost sure that he didn't. So he starts his own business and builds that. So and then I look at how I started mine, but I had a safety net. Yeah. I started mine knowing that I didn't have to take a salary from this business in the beginning because my other bit. Now, not to say that trying to do both wasn't difficult. As time went on, it got really harder to do. But again, that was something that that was my dad's signature. And don't get me wrong, I love that business, but it changed, and it did not change for the good with computers and big business and stuff. Back in the 60s and 70s, people owned their own little stores, and my dad was great at going in and talking to the individuals. Well, the little stores in the neighborhood are gone now. Now it's your big conglomerates, your Sam's, your Walmarts, and things like that. And it's not so much one-on-one anymore. It's too big. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, when I got out of the business, I tell people this, I felt bad about not feeling bad because it was my father's business. And I felt bad because I should miss it and feel kind of bad about it. But I didn't. And the way I rationalize it, and I think I'm on cue here, my dad would have hated it. Mm-hmm. That would have taken away what I thought was his biggest plus, was going in and talking to people. And that was now gone. I don't think he would have liked it either.
So is it closed down?
Well, no. This is kind of funny. I didn't think I'd spend some time on that business, but we'll do that. Uh, like I said, my dad started it. It's funny because you're not going to know any of these names, but he started with what was called Num Num potato chips, which was out of Cleveland, which morphed into New Era, which morphed into Frito-Lay. Okay. So we had Frito-Lay through the 60s up until 1972. In 1972, was a complete overhaul by Frito-Lay. They bought out all the individual distributorships. They wanted to go strictly company. So you were forced out. So my dad's, I got to think back. Okay, in 72, I'm in high school. I don't know anything. But I'm sitting there, I'm wondering, we had all these different chip companies and all these chips around our house going, okay, well, what are we going to do now? Because we're not going to have Frito-Lay anymore. So my dad chose, and we ended up with Snyder Berlin, which, again, my dad made great decisions. I wish I could follow along with what he does. I've made a couple, but it's all right. Anyway, so we took on Snyder's, and what ended up being was, long story short, we bought the territory from a distributor that had Snyder's up in Steubenville. And my dad purchased part of that territory. Well, we just got out of that business in 2020, the COVID year, and sold that part back to the guy we originally, second generation. His father, the sons took over that business, the same as ours was. So turned around and sold it back to him, and now it's back where it originally was. So yes.
That's a neat story.
Well, it's. I think the neat part is this, and you guys may know this, people may know this. A lot of second generation businesses don't make it for whatever reason. I mean, whether it's maybe the kids coming up think the business runs itself because their father or whatever, the family had it. But it doesn't work that way. You've got to continue to work it and nurture it and change with the changing times. You've got to be able to make decisions on the fly and make sure that you can keep it going. Again, I can go back and I'm thinking about second and third generation businesses that didn't make it for whatever reason. What has made me, I'll never forget, and I won't mention where it was, but I was getting ready. I was going to open my store, but I was a few months away from it, and I still needed running shoes. I didn't have any. So I went to a place where I would normally get the running shoes, and I remember, going up to the wall and going, "Hey, do you have this in a size 11?" And I remember that the woman went in the back, came out, dropped the pair of shoes in front of me, and walked away. Yeah. And in my mind, I'm going, that's it? That's the way you're going to do this? And in the back of my mind, I'm also going, if you continue to do this, you're going to fall behind. Because in my mind, and the difference is, and it's really very simple, and I'll go into why, and I get this at least 5-6 times a week. It's the service that I provide for that. In the beginning, and you talk about how things change. In the beginning, people just coming in looking for shoes. Now things have morphed into the doctors, the orthopedic surgeons sending me people. And the reason they're sending me people is because they want somebody that knows the product. You don't have that in a lot of places. I'm not saying all of them, but a lot of them you don't. But it's funny because the older people that come in, they're like, this is a dinosaur. And I'm going, what are you talking about? He goes, well, first off, you've got a Brannick over there that you measure your foot. I haven't seen one of those in 30 years. And the other one is, it's one-on-one. You're taking the time. This doesn't happen. I went, you are from the generation that remembers that. The new generation is actually probably going, well, this is new too, because they're not used to it. So to me, I provide more than a product. I'm providing the service. And anybody out there starting, my thing would be, if you have a passion for it, show that passion. It shows. I mean, if you have it, they'll see it. They'll know that you have a vested interest in what you're doing. And that was the difference, because now the hard part of that is I do have people that come in that have gotten too much information, maybe, and they'll come in and they'll say things like, I heard you can fix me. I can't do that. But I like my chances of getting you into something. I don't try to find, in this business, I don't try to find a shoe. I try to find the shoe. And if we can work towards that, and it's not an exact size, but I like my chances better than a big box store that's out there, just trying to sell you anything. So yeah, it's the service. And I think if you are starting a business, research every phase of it. I did that. Know new things that are coming out, because you might get lucky really with that. So those are things that the big box stores, I hate to say it, they don't do their homework. They're just looking at their bottom line, their profit margins, all that. As a single entrepreneur, you've got to look a little deep. Yeah, you brought that up. I don't know. I used to look at failure, and I'm gonna, and my wife will tell you, I put things in, a lot of the stuff that I do in business, I put in my running terms, because I used to be able to compare just about anything to running. Like hills in your life, and you got the downhill part of your life, which is going easy. Then you get the uphill, and it's like, oh, this isn't so easy, but you've got to fight through it. And at one time, I remember reading sometimes, or saw it somewhere, that they said about Thomas Edison failed like 2,000 times. And he said, I didn't fail. He said, I just found out that there's 2,000 ways not to make a light bulb. So he didn't fail. So yeah, it's a tough way to say what is failure. In running terms, I used to think that failure was, I set this goal and I didn't attain it. But that's not necessarily true. Because it's okay to dream big, and you may shoot for here, but you got here. And that's not failure. That's just, it's like when I was a kid, and the Olympics are going on now, and it was like, when I was in high school, I want to be an Olympic runner. Well, big time goal, did not reach there, obviously, but I don't think I failed. I always tell people that, like in my running career, I was like a sponge. I got everything out of this body that I could get out of it that was within my God-given ability to do, okay? I wasn't built like a lot of the other runners. I didn't have, I had the drive and the desire, which is why you do reach certain levels. So I think the worst failure is, like I probably kind of said, is not doing something. That's failure, at least attempt it. I mean, I don't want to go through life. I would have hated going through life going, oh, what if? Just what if? And I don't have to do that anymore. So I don't look at failure as really setting that goal and not reaching it. It's kind of like, okay, set it up there, but see how close you can get to it. Getting close may be good enough. So yeah. I dumped.
Years.
And I will explain that why. I did at one time. At one time, when I first opened, I was coaching, and I had the other business. So time was a little bit tougher. So I would leave in the afternoon to go to track or cross country practice, and I would be gone for maybe 2 hours. So I would have somebody here. I had one girl in the beginning. She was very good. And we'll go back into the teaching part of that too, by the way. But I would leave for those 2 hours or whatever. Well, as my business did morph into doctors sending me people, and like we mentioned, they could come as far as like New Martinsville. And they're coming to see me. And I'm not trying to be egotistical, but they're basically no, the doctor will say you got to go see this guy. He can point you in the right direction with you for what we got going on here. And I did try to convey that to the people that I did have working for me. And I've only had a handful. I had a gentleman that was an older gentleman that was good, and I taught him as much as I kind of could. And it would actually even kind of tick him off at times because people would come looking for me. I'm not here, and they would just turn. He goes, well, I can help you. He goes, nope, I'll come back and turn. Well, he was capable. But in their mind, my doctor said, no, talk to him. Okay. And I get that. So at some point in time, I said, nope, I got to be there. And I don't have the long hours that a lot of places have, like if you were at the mall, I don't have mall hours. But when somebody calls and they'll say, well, who do I ask for? I go, you're not going to get anybody else. When you walk through that door, you're getting me. That's it. So, and at one time somebody said, can you just teach somebody this? And I did. I gave that some thought. And I'm like, I wouldn't know where to begin, because over 50 some years of running and coaching and injuries and different things that have happened in my life, I'm like, there's a lot of stuff I do on the fly that's in the back of my head that I didn't even know or remember that was there. But it's one of those things where I went, no, I can't. And I've been asked to move out to the mall, and I've stayed.
And mom asked you?
Yes. Yes. They came in, and I don't remember the gentleman's name. Very nice guy. But he was going into his spiel, and in the back of my head, I'm going, whatever your spiel is, not going to do it. And then I'm going to give you my reasons why. But he did his homework, because he came in and he said, you are a destination business. And I went, okay. He goes, you have people, you have doctors that refer people to you. And I went, and in my mind, I'm going, this guy's done his homework, And I was a little impressed with that. And he said, you come out here, we've got a small place. That's all the space you need. We can set you up. We do this. And he did go into a spiel. And I said, okay, here's the downfall. I said, number one, I'm a one-man guy, and I would have to hire people. And I'm not against hiring people. I'm just against hiring and trying to teach you this, because places you can get good reputations, you can get bad reputations. So just like the place that I told you I went in and she drops the shoes at my feet, and I'm going, this is going to spread like wildfire, that you don't provide any type of service here. So, and then I told him, I said, I can't be here all the hours that the mall's open. So, and I said, I have to have employees. I said, I don't want to do that. Thank you, but no, thank you. And the reason, and he said, well, you're still going to have those people that are being sent from, the doctors and things like that. Plus, you'll have the people that are out here at the mall just browsing around. And it sounded bad, because I saw a look on his face when I said, I hate to tell you this, but that's kind of not the people that I'm geared towards. And he goes, well, you don't want shoppers? I went, no, that's not what I said. I said, I provide a service. Most of the people that walk through my door, over 70% of them have an issue or a problem that they want it figured out, or they want help figured out. I mean, I can't fix you, but we're going to work at it. The worst customer I may have would be the person that comes in and goes, I'm just looking for a pretty shoe. Well, you're on your own, because I really don't know pretty. Trust me, when it comes to picking shoes. I mean, I know what shoes, but I don't know what colors. So, and I'm not going to say those are the people that I don't want, but I don't want that to take away with my time with working with somebody that does need some help because they have issues.
Okay.
It's okay. I'm glad you brought that up, because this is kind of an odd story. There was one in particular. I had a local orthopedic surgeon that started sending me people. And they would come in with this little green paper, and he had a list of 3 brands on that paper. And it was 3 that I carried, and I carried what I think are the best. And I always tell people what I carry, if I wouldn't wear it myself, I don't think you should. So that's the way I kind of do it. So when did it tip? It would have been probably about 15, 18 years ago, somewhere in there. This orthopedic surgeon started sending people in because he knew I carried these brands. And evidently I must have helped a couple of his people that came back. And he said, hey, yeah, that's a good shoe. Where'd you get it? And he kept hearing my name come up. And it's funny because at this time, and I think I've told you this one, we had a runners club that was local, and our guy that was our president, we had a meeting, and before the meeting, I'm talking to this gentleman that, well, I'm just being cordial because he's never been there. Looked like maybe maybe it's going to be a new member or something. So we're staying in there talking, and the meeting starts, and I didn't get the gentleman's name or anything. And as our president said, we have a guest speaker today, and it's orthopedic, blah, blah, blah. And I went, that's the guy. That's who I was just talking to. And did not know it. And then he got up there, and as he's going on, he says, one of the members said, well, what shoes do you recommend? And he said, well, I sent him down to this place called the Runners Connection, and because he knows the shoes. And then that's when our president stepped in and he said, that's the guy that you were just talking to 5 minutes before this meeting started. So that's how it was a strange meeting. That's how we met. And then he was a walker, and we'd meet at races and stuff. So he started with that, and then it morphed into, it always seems that they send me people before I meet them. And it happened again, another doctor, it was a Saturday, and I was busy. It was a Saturday and during either track or cross country season. And I saw a guy and a girl come in scrubs, and they're looking at the shoes. And when I say they're looking at the shoes, I don't mean they're just kind of looking at the shoes. They're bending them, they're analyzing them, they're looking inside. And I'm over there actually going, nobody does this. What are you doing? So finally, after everybody left, he walks over and he goes, hey, I'm Dr. Such and Such. And I went, yeah, I know you. You've been sending me people. He goes, yeah. He says, and we got to actually sit down and talk. And the nice thing about that was I loved it because this was a man that explained stuff to me, and then I would say something about shoes to him, and he had questions. So it was a learning experience for both of us, which I thought was really kind of, good to have just a kind of a session there where you can go back and forth. And he taught me some things, and I actually was able to teach him some things because he wasn't in that business. He knew the foot, I knew the shoe. So you put those two together, and yeah, it did make for it. So, and I don't know how to tell you, but it's morphed to about 6, 7, maybe 8 foot doctors. I've got physical therapists and a few again that I've just met in the last couple of months. But it seems like they send them, then they come in, which is odd.
That's interesting.
Originally, when I used to hear that term, I used to think, if you've ever seen the movie Coal Miner's Daughter, that to me was the picture of Appalachia, which meant just areas that struggled for whatever reason. And again, maybe just because of hard times or whatever. I never really, and I would always think that, I think that took place in like Kentucky, Tennessee, something like that. And you always think about the back hills or backwoods of that. Until I remember that term coming up for whatever reason. And I went, oh my gosh, we fall into that. And I guess that I would look at as kind of an area, not of what we used to call the old Rust Belt, in manufacturing, but an area that is a little bit more depressed, maybe, Maybe the jobs aren't there, and if they're not there, they're not good jobs or whatever. So I never really, and until I think somebody brought up the X amount of counties in the state of Ohio that were Appalachian, I went, oh my gosh, we're on this. I mean, I didn't even think Ohio would have qualified. But it was one of those things that I just thought a little depressed. But but then when you go back and look, and I started, and like I mentioned earlier, when you go back to Bellaire in the 60s and 70s and compare it to now, I understand. For whatever reason, people can sit there and blame the malls, and now you can sit here and start blaming, people buy online and they do that, and they don't realize that, there are some things I guess you can do online, and we're all guilty of it. We all do it, but like with my business, it's kind of like I don't want people doing that. First off, you're taking a shot in the dark, especially if you're one of these people that I mentioned that you come in and you have some issues, and it doesn't have to be anything serious. Just like, hey, I'm going to start running. I don't even know where to begin, and that's okay because we can discuss that and go through that. But I just look at the towns up and down this river, but on the plus side of that, I look at each town and I'll go, hey, that business is unique to that area. And we have a few of them here in town. I mean, there's places here that people, I mean, come on, you're coming in. I don't care. I have relatives that come from like Las Vegas, and they don't go see family until they go to Goulas. Okay. So, and at one time, and not skipping back a few, but it was almost like people once told me, and this is really key. People once told me, people won't come to Bellaire. I'm not living proof. I can sit here and tell you that's not true. It's not true. If you have, I don't care who you are, where you are, what you're doing. If you have something that people want, it's kind of like from the Field of Dreams. If you build it, he will come. Well, they will come. And you provide something they want along with the service of it, they'll come. And they'll come from further than you actually think. So as for the Appalachia thing, I don't think about that too much because I look at it as, again, I think you can attempt stuff, and again, you need to stay at it. If it's your passion, go for it. If you're struggling, it's like I tell people here, I surprise people. And again, it's funny. And in the beginning, it used to tick me off. Okay. It doesn't anymore. I would have people in the beginning come, and I know why they say it, and I'll go into it, but they'll come and they'll say, you do okay here? And I'm like, yeah, what do you mean? They're like, well, you sure you do okay? You're in Bellaire. I went, okay, what's your point? I know what they're saying. In the back of their mind going, you can't start a business here or you can't do it here. Now, in our chip business, which was entirely different, that was wholesale. That's different than, like in that business, there was no such thing as a recession. As a matter of fact, during a recession, times your sales went up because people were a little bit depressed, so they eat more chips. But I people would come in and they would say, you do okay? And they're looking around as if like, you sure you do okay? And then now they'll come in and go, you do okay here? And I went, yeah. And then somebody will be in here and goes, you ought to come in here on a Saturday when you can't find a seat or so. And then I have the people that, and they're mostly, and to be honest, a lot of them are Bellaire people. They're like, holy cow, I walk by. I mean, I'll have Denny across the street. He'll come over. He goes, try to come over there 3 or 4 times. You're so busy. I can't. I said, don't be lost. Don't get me wrong. There are times where there's nothing going on, but there's those times when it can get pretty hectic. And again, you're back to that. Okay, if you're struggling, and trust me, I didn't start that way. But you got to pay your dues. You got to put the time into it. If you're struggling, start analyzing why. What are other people doing in this business? That are they taking it away from me? Or are they doing something different? It's kind of like I love on Sundays, and I just watched it yesterday. On Sundays, I sit there on the History Channel and I watch that, the foods and stuff that built America. And I'm sitting there watching, last night's particularly, the National Biscuit Company, which became Nabisco. Okay. They got big and they're getting big. And then the Sunshine Cookie Company, Biscuit Company come out and they make the sandwich cookie, which is the Hydrox, which I thought was a stupid name, but that's up to them. And it was the the chocolate out with the vanilla middle, and they came up with it, and they put it out there, and it was flying. And then Nabisco comes back, and again, paying attention what competition's doing is what I'm really getting at. So Nabisco comes back, and we got to do this. Hence the Oreo. Talk to today's people. Probably never heard of a Hydrox, yet that was first. So again, pay attention to what maybe other people that you're doing have it, or do some research and find out that you can do something more unique or different that draws away from those people. And again, I'm going to go back to the service. I have a slogan that I've used here, and it's on a couple of my commercials that I've used, and it's actually not a slogan anymore. It's actually true, and it's come in a customer and leave a friend. I've had people that I've connected with here that they'll come in now just to talk. They don't need to buy anything. They'll just come in. And the guys usually will reach out and shake my hand, and you don't see that anymore. That's not something that is in today's society. So for these people that are a little bit older, that understand how service back in the day in the industry worked, they're so happy to see it. They just love it. No. I was actually around the corner, and in 2018, I used to rent from the Rigases, which were great people to rent from, and they closed up in 2018. And it was kind of twofold. I didn't know where they were going with the building and the business. And the second part was I had brought on some new items, and I was actually outgrowing that area. It was fine for when I started. I guess a good problem to have is to outgrow something. So I wanted to move, and again, back to it, I wanted to stay in Bellaire. So I think I was out running, and I went by, and there was like a for rent sign here, and I went, when did that pop up? I didn't see that before. And it was just like that day. And I knew the woman that had it and sat down with her, and next thing I know, I'm moving. Now, the plus part was I didn't have to move very far, which was really a plus. But it gave me more space. And to be honest, I'm also now getting, and I'll have people when they come in, they go, "You're running out of space again." I went, "I kind of am, but I just found a way to store extras. I got some extra footage that I somehow found, and I'll show you later what I'm talking about." But so no, I moved. I always wanted to stay in town, and I wanted a place that, a nicer place. So yeah, and I love when people come in and say, "Yeah, you got a nice little place here." It's an old building, like most of the buildings in Bellaire, but
What was here before?
how far you want to go back? Okay, I'll go back to what I remember. I think this was, and if you walk out front, you'll see a mosaic pattern, and you can see this up by the Sons of Italy too. They did this in town in the 60s, I believe, maybe. This was Hyman's. This was a women's clothing store at one time. Now, the business next to me and here was all one building. Now it's been separated. So then recently after that, it had become a Hallmark store. So it was a Hallmark store when I had opened over there. So that's up at 20, 25 years ago. So then that went out. Then there's been a few other things that came in and out of here. But again, you think back, and I like looking at kind of old pictures. I've actually, like the building next door is like built in the 1800s, and you'll look and you're like, I used to be right there where that, and now I think it was a meat place, but you're looking at everything, you can go back over the years and probably go through town and go, well, this used to be this, and this eventually, so all those things have changed. But it's kind of neat because you'll see on the old buildings, even across here, you'll see the sign up there written it says Hirschberg. That was a clothing store. At one time, 60s or 70s, you didn't have to leave Bellaire to get everything that you possibly needed. You had clothing stores, you had jewelers, you had everything. Everything that a mall would have, you would have had in town. So in the 70s, when the malls came out, yeah, that was what hit. But now I do believe it's going the other direction. So, but Old Town, but like I said, you like to look at that. You go up by Sons of Italy, and in front there's green with it, and that was Mendelssohn's. It was a men's shop where we went when I was a kid all the time. So yeah. Wow.
Like, where you think they're missing it?
I think you, and I don't know what manner to do this. You have to provide the opportunity. Again, like if you're Bellaire, what would bring business to Bellaire? Okay. A lot of times you've got to look and say, what does it have to offer? Some towns up and down here get a bad rap. They get a bad name, and they've been stuck in that. And how do you change that? But I think first off, if you've got old buildings in old towns like you do here, you've got to look into renovations to help people out. Sure, they'll put their investment in. They're not, most people are not looking for a handout. They're looking for help. So, this is an old building, but the people that had it before, they've done a nice job renovating it, and it can be done up and down the street or all over. It doesn't need, but some people don't have, they'll put their own vested interest into it, but they need some help. So whether that be, the city or the county or the state or whoever it is, give the opportunity. That's all. Just give them a chance. We've got people that have started stuff in, you always hear the stories like IBM and all these people, started in a garage. Well, that's what some people are still doing, and you've got to morph into something else. And like, again, we're going back to those, when I watch some of those programs about, some stuff even happens by mistake. But what I mean by that is they started with a product they thought they were making, and it morphed into something else that they could use it for. So give these people a chance. Don't give up on them. I mean, the malls and things are fine, but small towns have a lot to offer. And then you got people coming in to not just shop, but create an atmosphere that's nice. We have a business alliance here in town, and we're trying to draw people in to just to showcase, what Bellaire has. And again, I was told so many times, people will not come to Bellaire and shop, and they're wrong. They're just they won't. You give them a reason, and they're going to come. So the powers to be, give them a chance. Help them out. I mean, even if it's in like the city, even if it's in a tax break, if it's something, try to lure people in and keep them here rather than go somewhere else.
I think people forget that all those big companies that they want, they started as small businesses.
They did.
One-person shopper in the garage.
Sure.
And I think for too many years, we've forgotten to, it's like a garden, we've forgotten to nourish that.
good analogy because people don't realize that if you give them a chance, and then you just crack the door open, just get the door open for them. And if they have, like for me, I mean, I had a passion for it. And again, I was like, I got to do this. Was there times when I thought, well, okay, I know you didn't ask this, but I got to go. And sometimes you talk about the powers that be. I opened in November, and this is going to be good for people that just either starting out or have run into these speed bumps, I like to call them. I started in November. I had a buddy of mine that actually has a store down in Parkersburg. So I picked his brain, went down to his store, everything, watched him work. And I did that with that franchise. I went and looked at the business and stuff. And I'm like, this is exact. Yeah, okay, I'm on the right page. So I come back and I open in November the 16th, to be honest with you. Didn't start out well. Got into December thinking, okay, Christmas is coming. Didn't really bump that too much. It wasn't. January came. Now we're into the winter months. And I get a hold of my buddy that had his store. And he said, Dennis, you opened the worst month you could have opened. November is the worst for this. And I went, I figures I'd get it right. Told you my decisions are sometimes off. But that's when I was ready. So that's when it came about. So you go through November, December, January, February. And I remember March was rolling around and I'm thinking, okay, I'm a running store. I've gotten some word out there. Track season's coming up. Okay. And I'll never forget. It was that year. I don't know what kind of winter it was, but it wasn't rough, but it wasn't mild either. But I remember saying, and I told this to my wife, and it was a Saturday. And it was a nice day. It was the first nice Saturday since winter. We kind of put that behind us. And I remember going, today's D-Day. And she goes, what are you talking about? I said, today's D-Day, my decision day. I said, if something doesn't happen with being track season, being a nice day out here, then I've got to make some decisions. And I was around, like I said, I was around the corner at the smaller place. I opened at 11, and I don't know where these people came from, but they were coming out of the woodwork. Now, what the next problem was, I don't have enough seats. And the next was I wasn't that schooled at what I did. So I hadn't had a ton going on in the last 3 months that I'm going, gosh, what? And it started to fill up. And to this day, it is what, and this is the part about the powers that be. To this day, other than some days where I've had groups come in, it's one of my top 3 days without inviting other track teams, and I've done those in the past and have had this. But I'm like, that was my answer. That answer said, stay. And it was odd because it was like, I picked one day. And that day was truly D-Day. It was the day that said, yep, stay with us. Now, did all Saturdays get like that? No. But that was my sign to say, stay with it. And again, for other people, you're gonna go through those. And as a business person, you're gonna have to decide at some point, yeah, where do I go from here? But I always look back to that day. And I had a customer come in, and I think this was part of my allure. I had this I like to connect with people when they come in, make it personalized. And I can actually get the group actually sometimes I say my store's a little bit like Floyd's Barbershop in Mayberry. People come in, they all know each other. Or they haven't seen anybody in years. They go, oh, yeah, and they're or they all get to talking because they're all here for the same purpose. Okay. So that's kind of funny. But I had this gruff guy come in one time, and I was trying to get him. I couldn't get him to laugh. I think I did, but I couldn't get him. He was trying. He goes, I want to try walking shoes. And I was all right. I brought these out, put these on. He goes, these aren't walking shoes, these are running shoes. And he's going on. I got other people in there. And he says, and it was one of those days where finally I said, all right, I'm going to see if he's got a sense of humor. And he said, at that time it was called LB's. He said, could I run LB's in these shoes? I went, no, but you can eat at LB's in those shoes. And and the place just erupted. And then he laughed. It did. I thought his face was going to crack, but he smiled and he goes, good one. You know. So again, basically getting off tangent, but connect with your customers. You know, it's not hard. You know, at least here, you know, I've already got a connection. I used to remember that there was a car guy. Used car salesmen always get bad raps, but I met a guy that I said, okay, how do you do it? Because you know people already coming in don't like used car salesmen. He said, I connect with them. And I go, what do you mean? He goes, if I know that they fish and I fish, we're going to connect on that. If I know that they like the Cleveland Browns and I like the Cleveland, we're going to, make some, create enough conversation that you can connect somewhere along. I've already got a connection. We're coming in with shoes. And if they're runners, I always like talking to the young kids because it's like, I'd say, how do you get started? What made you go out for cross country? What made you go out for track? And then I tell them my story. And I've had one, and I know I talk too much. I have people tell me that, but I'll have one lady used to bring her daughter and she goes, she loves hearing your stories. And she just comes in for those. And I went, well, I don't have any more. I might be out of them now. But just that connection, make that one-on-one connection. That's what I mean about coming in a customer and leaving a friend. By the time they're done, you found out something about them that you didn't know and you connected with it, So make it personal. It's good. It's okay. Mm-hmm. I don't know. It hasn't changed. I can remember as in it was funny as a kid, like in the 6th grade. I remember the teacher. We had this day where it says, "What do you want to be?" You know, and it was funny because, you know, I'm probably saying professional baseball player. You know, all the kids at that age were picking something like that. There was one guy in the family or in our group there that was in our class that said that he wanted to be funeral director, and he went on to be a funeral director. Those Bachniks, but they'll skip. But I think that the definition of success is being able to do something that you love and make it your business that you can thrive off of, not just survive, but to thrive off of. And did it change over the years? The business changed, but not my passion for what I did. I'm almost, sometimes I'm embarrassed when people say, well, what time do you go to work? And the word work doesn't kind of fit into what I do in my mind. Okay. In my mind, it's like, if you can do something you love doing, it's not work anymore. So I'm not one of those that dread getting up in the morning and going, I got to go here. No, it's never happened. Not 25 years yet.